In this movie, we'll tilt the head upright, which is about the most advanced maneuver you can pull off using Liquify. And we'll do so using a combination of the twirl and warp tools. So I'm going to turn off the current layer, and I'm going to make another copy of the background by pressing Control-Alt-J or Command-Option-J on the Mac. And I'll call this new layer Tilted Head, and then I'll click OK. Now I'll press Control-Shift-X or Command-Shift-X on the Mac in order to bring up the Liquify window. And I'll scroll up here so that I can see the model's head. Now, first thing we want to do is grab that twirl tool and increase the size of your cursor to about 600 pixels. And then click right there in the center of the model's face around the nose in order to twirl her head. And that gets us probably about 50% the way there, even though it ends up kind of twisting her head as well, which is part of the problem. So I'm going to switch back to the warp tool now. And using the same big brush here, I'm just going to kind of drag the model's head over to the right in order to shift its position, which causes us further problems in terms of that bend that we're seeing. So I'm going to press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. Let's try upping the brush density. You can take it as high as 100, and what that is essentially the edge detail of the brush. So it's analogous to softness where a standard brush is concerned. And using a high brush density value, you can pretty much move everything inside of that brush uniformly. All right, now I'm going to zoom in to the 100% view ratio so I can better see what I'm doing. And we could try sticking with 100 brush density for the other changes we need to make, but it's probably unwise. We need a little bit of softness. So I'm going to reduce the brush density back to 50% here. And then I'm going to start dragging these details around. And from here, it is altogether a matter of warping. We don't have any skew tools inside of Liquify. We don't have any other tools that are going to take care of some of these problems. If I do something like this where I make an eye too small, then I could try something like the bloat tool. Might as well give that a try and see what happens. But otherwise, I'm just going to be spending a ton of time warping the details around. Now, one of the things I noticed when I was working inside of this image is that the mouth has a tendency to get messed up pretty quickly. So you might want to go ahead and grab the Freeze Mask tool and then paint over the mouth once it gets to a good place, because otherwise you might end up making your lips look too thin or too fat or what have you, and that's going to really ruin the quality of the image. Now I'm taking her jaw up, as you can see here, and I'm going to increase the size of her cheek as well, and I can't stress enough how it's just a matter of taking your time and making judicious, small brush strokes and not trying to get anything done too quickly. Anyway, as opposed to watching me paint forever and ever here, because eventually I'll get someplace, but it could take me, something like 10 minutes, I've gone ahead and saved a mesh in advance. And you can get to it by clicking on the Load Mesh button, and then you'll find a file called headupright.msh. Then click Open in order to apply that mesh, and you can see that her head is now upright. All right, I'm going to get rid of that mask by grabbing my Thaw Mask tool, which is essentially the mask eraser, and just painting over that area. And then I think I want to reduce the size of this left eye just a titch, not nearly that much. So now let's press Control-Alt-Z or Command-Option-Z. Let's try this instead. I'll grab my pucker tool, and I'm going to take the brush rate down to, let's say, 20, and then try to see if that does a better job for us. And that ends up doing pretty good. That was still a little too fast, wasn't it? So I'll undo that change, take the brush rate down to 10 this time, and click. And basically, it controls the speed of the tool, particularly when you're just clicking as opposed to dragging with the tool. All right, I'm going to grab Forward Warp here, and I'll drag up on the eye just a little bit in order to raise it so that we're creating the appearance of a higher eyelid. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now, at this point, I could save over my mesh and save over this file, but I don't want to do that in this case because it could prove confusing if you're trying to follow along. So instead, I'll just click OK in order to apply my changes to the image. And this is the final, folks. This is where we started with her basically slouching. She's got her head over to the left. And now this is her with perfect posture. She's sitting upright. Her shoulders are at the same level. She looks dynamite, thanks to our ability to retouch images with impunity using Liquify.